Oh, there we go. Look,
Alive.
and it's a bit later than usual, but welcome to the NFL Corner episode 16. We are slowly, again, as I say every week, rolling through the division previews, and we are now on the AFC South. Would I be correct?
Correct. Week 6 as well. So only two divisions are left after this.
Yep, only 2 divisions left. Some would say 3/4 of the way. That person would be me. So nothing in the way of news again, really, in the NFL. There was the 4th and 15 that we mentioned last week, but by the looks of it, that isn't going to be passed in the coming weeks. So nothing's going to change with that. Apart from that, is there anything I can really mention? Hi, Gavin. But apart from saying hello to Gavin, straight into it, Will? Or is there anything you want to mention?
No, nothing really. And it was like you said, the rule change was proposed, but it apparently got rejected. The owners said we're not going to, continue with it. So it looks like the 4-15 rule will not be being implemented into the next NFL season, which some could say it's a shame. But I know for me and Kieran, we definitely prefer that we keep the special teams. We keep a bit of something for the special teams to work on with their onside kicks because. They don't come off very often, but when they do, it's a limbs fair to say because it is very rare it happens. But when it does happen, the fans love it.
I was watching Chris Sims Unbuttoned the other day, and the stat Ahmed had was basically in games where the team attempted onside kicks, there is 0 wins in 104 of the last attempted onside kicks. So it doesn't really make a difference, but it leaves them with. And another point they made on that podcast was for teams that like to run the ball, which we'll mention the Titans who are coming up today, that just screws them over because at 4th and 15 you can't. It's unlikely you're going to break 15 yards running the ball. So it's more.
It favours the Patrick Mahomes of the world, doesn't it, and the Sean Watsons and whatnot.
Yeah, pretty much. So. A good scramble and then unleashes 15-yard gains, and that's not everyone can do that. So we'll start. We talked about the Titans and the Texans, but we won't start with them. We are on the AFC South, which means we've got the Jaguars, the Colts, the Titans, and the Texans, and we'll be starting with a lovely podcast, a lovely PowerPoint again by you, Will. Every week, I thank you for these PowerPoints.
I enjoyed this one this week. This was a fun one to make this week.
It's the Jacksonville Jaguars.
It was the first team, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they finished last season with a 6-10 record and missed the playoffs. They placed a franchise tag on defensive end Yannick Ngakoue, who's made his intentions clear. He wants out, but the Jags held on to him by giving him that tag. And they might still be negotiating trade, but as of right now, there's no new news on that. So he's still on the roster as of right now. Their main acquisition this offseason in free agency was signing former Browns linebacker Joe Scobert to a 5-year, $53.75 million contract. He's more of that all-star linebacker. He's not super athletic, but he makes the tackles. He's more of that player that's going to have at least 10 tackles a game. He's in a short tackler, and he's now the starting middle linebacker for the Jacksonville Jaguars, along with Miles Jack. They also signed former Bengals tight end Tyler Eifert to a 2-year, $15.5 million deal. I like the deal. It's quite sheepish, and he's a player who, when healthy, is one of the best vertical threat tight ends in the league. He's a very good receiving tight end, and he just adds more firepower to that Jacksonville Jaguars offense, along with Gardner Minshew. It gives him another weapon. But the question is, can he stay healthy? And the reason he's not being paid a lot of money is because his health is in question. He cannot stay healthy, but when he is, we hope he's healthy. He can definitely perform. And they also signed former Redskins running back Chris Thompson. He's more of like a running back wide receiver, good at the backfield. So they signed him to a cheap 1-year deal. It's a low risk and could be a high reward. They signed and re-signed another 5 players as well, to cheaper deals. Notable loss, however, they lost some big names. Fair to say this offseason, they lost Calais Campbell, who traded away to the Ravens for a 5th-round pick. They could have got so much more for Calais Campbell. It was such a robbery from the Ravens to get him for that cheap. But he's now gone. They got rid of Nick Foles and his big contract. He went to the Chicago Bears for a 5th-round pick. And they also lost A.J. Boyer for a 4th-round pick. He went to the Denver Broncos. Obviously, mid-season, in this past season, they got rid of Jalen Ramsey. They traded him to the Rams for multiple picks. So it really is full rebuild time for the Jacksonville Jaguars. It also meant they had 2 first-round picks this year. The first one they used on C.J. Henderson, the cornerback from Florida. He was picked 9th overall, and then with the 20th overall pick, they took Caleb Von Chason, defensive end from LSU, to kind of, maybe he's the heir to Yannick Ngakoue for when he is traded, or he can come in as an heir to obviously Calais Campbell, who was traded to the Ravens. So overall, what do you think to the offseason for the Jags, Kieran?
Pretty much as you said, it's very much rebuild mode for Jacksonville at the moment. Obviously, last season was 6-10. They had a little bit of problem whether they wanted to run with Gardner Minshew as their quarterback for the future, or they ran with Foles. Obviously, that decision has now obviously been made. They're running with Gardner Minshew and they're ready to ride or die with him. So we'll see how that affects them in the coming season. One bit I will give credit to, I think they had a decent draft. I think the Jaguars had a nice draft. They had they had a haul of picks, because that's what they're really trying to do at the moment. Is rebuild, especially on the defensive side of the ball, because they lost Calais. They're going to lose Yannick. They've lost a lot in the secondary with AJ Boye and Jalen Ramsey. So I think they're slowly going to start rebuilding that defense. But it's hard not to think this has been a really tough off season for Jacksonville, and especially with it's looking more and more likely Ngakoue is going to stay, but it's one more year and he's out. That's what you're going to get.
Yeah, definitely. It's either. I mean, if Ngakoue is not traded, this will definitely be 100% his last year. He might sit out the season or refuse to play, because he's made his intentions clear. He said on Twitter he wants out. Him and the owner arguing, which is not a good look for the franchise when your owner's arguing with the star defensive end on Twitter. But they also got Laviska Shenault in the second round, a versatile wide receiver to add another weapon to the offense. So I think it's fair to say the Jags definitely look like, on offense, they improved a lot this season. And Joe Scobert's a nice signing, but when you lose core players like Campbell and AJ Boye, players that have been there for a while, and obviously with a player wanting out in Yannick, it's tough for the Jags. And we'll have to see how they do. I do feel like their coach, Gus Bradley, I think this is probably his last season as Jags coach, especially if they finish with like a terrible record and finish in the top, at the bottom of the AFC. I think it could be the end of his spell as a Jags head coach. But it really is, if Minshew is a prove-it year for him, can he do what he did last season? Obviously, last season he had 21 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He came in as a late-round pick and did really well. But can he do that? Can he repeat that in his second season? I think if he just has another mess season, you could see a certain Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields with a new quarterback of the Jacksonville Jaguars at the start of next season.
I agree. I do feel for Gardner Minshew, though, because he has been put in a pretty rough spot at the moment. Obviously, there was also rumours that Leonard Fournette was a trade. They're putting him out basically as a trade option. They were like, we're willing to get rid of him. Nothing came in worth what they believed was worth it anyway. So they just went, fine, doesn't matter, we'll run with him as well. So they're clearly not fully sold on Leonard Fournette after what pick did they? It was a fourth
overall pick. He had a decent rookie season, but he's another one who's suffered with injuries, and he is a free agent next season.
Yeah, I was going to say it was a high pick in the draft. So again, you'd arguably say it's been a bust. He's had a couple of good seasons, but is it 4th overall seasons? No, definitely not. Not in my opinion, anyway. So they're running with him and Chris Thompson next year, arguably. I like the pick of Laviska Shenault, but the risks there with injuries. That's the only knock on Laviska. He could have easily, I know going up to the draft, you were thinking possible first rounder, but then that core muscle injury, he couldn't work out the combine, I don't think, if I remember rightly, because he had that core muscle injury, or he did a little bit. So it's one of them, high ceiling, but the floor could drop from underneath him if he keeps getting injured. So Gardner's in a tough spot. The team's in a tough spot. The franchise is in a tough spot. So I'm not expecting anything from Jacksonville next season.
No, I totally agree. I think when you look at this division on a whole, obviously we'll go through all the teams, it's looking like Jacksonville are going to be at the foot of the AFC South. They're not looking like a team that's going to contend. They don't have that roster, they don't have that depth anywhere. And it's definitely rebuild mode for the Jags and just retooling. I mean, it's crazy to think that in 2018, in January, this team was in the AFC Championship game and was 7 minutes away from beating the Patriots in Foxborough, and they lost. Back then was Blake Bortles. He was their quarterback, and he struggled to take them over the hump and get them to the Super Bowl. But that defense was something special, and I think there's one or two remaining people from that defense. Everyone else is gone, so it really is rebuilding time for the Jags. But what we've said on the Jags, we'll move on to the next team in the division, and that is the Indianapolis Colts. They finished last season with a 7-9 record and missed the playoffs. Disappointing season for them, really. They made the playoffs, not the season just gone, the season before that with Andrew Luck at quarterback. They went 10-6, and they made it to the divisional round where they lost to the Chiefs. But this season they finished with a 7-9 record and obviously missed the playoffs. Their main off-season acquisition was getting defensive tackle DeForest Buckner, the Pro Bowl defensive tackle from the San Francisco 49ers, in exchange for a 2020 first-round pick, which was the 13th overall pick. They also gave Buckner an extension that pays him $21 million per season, so he's now one of the highest-paid defensive linemen in the league. But they've given up that first-round pick for him, but he's there for the future. I think it's a 5-year deal they've given him, so he'll be there for a long time, and he's still relatively young anyway. So I really, really like that pickup from the Colts. I know their GM Chris Ballard was looking for that defensive tackle in the middle, that big run stuffer that can, disrupt the offensive line of the opposition. He's been looking for one of those players for a long time. He's finally got it in DeForest Buckner. They also re-signed their long-time left tackle Anthony Costanzo to a 2-year, $33 million contract. Again, it's a really nice deal for a player who's consistently good for them and keeps the offensive line intact, probably up there with the best offensive lines in the NFL. They also signed former Chargers quarterback Phillip Rivers to a 1-year, $25 million contract, and they signed former Vikings cornerback Xavier Rhodes to a 1-year, $3 million contract. I like both deals. I think Rivers is definitely an upgrade over Jacoby Brissett, given the offensive line and the offensive weapons they have. I think that's really, really looking really nice there. Phillip Rivers, I mean, there's rumours that he could be wanting to play more than 1 year with the Colts. We'll have to see how that pans out. He has only signed a 1-year deal. And even the signing of Xavier Rhodes for $3 million, it's pretty much nothing. Why not get him in there? He brings experience. He brings leadership to the secondary. So a nice signing there for the Colts. They signed and re-signed another 2 players, the cheaper deals. The notable losses, however, were Eric Ebron, who went to the Steelers, Jabal Sheard, who's still on the market as a free agent, but was one of their best pass rushers last season, and Pierre Desir, a surprise release, signed with the Jets, who we covered last week. With their first pick in the second round, they drafted Michael Pittman Jr., the wide receiver from USC, with the 34th overall pick. They also got running back Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin in the second round, who they can pair with Marlon Mack, who they might be, reluctant to pay Marlon Mack, so maybe Jonathan Taylor is the running back for the future. What do you think of the offseason from the Colts, Kieran?
Quietly, very, very good. I'm not going to lie. I think the Colts were already a good team last year. I don't think the record did them justice in terms of, because they have a good team, but I think running with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback was a little bit of a hindrance. They never quite got it going to playoff form, but I do think the Colts are a good team. The DeForest Buckner trade worked wonders. That is you're getting a proven top quality defensive tackle in DeForest Buckner, who's just off appearing in a Super Bowl. And it was a perfect trade for both teams because San Francisco couldn't pay everybody. And the Colts pick up arguably one of the best defensive tackles in the league. As they put, we re-signed Anthony Costanzo. It's a good deal for both parties. He fits there. He works there. The Phillip Rivers one, this is boom or bust for me because if you get the Phillip Rivers that was there last year in the NFL, the Colts will be looking at a similar record to last season, if not worse, because of the way he played last year. But if they get the Phillip Rivers from 3 seasons,
even the season before, the season just gone, he was very, very good. He led the Chargers to 11-5 record. This season was just an awful year for him and the Chargers, wasn't it, really?
Yeah, but you've got an experienced guy who knows the NFL, and he's proven to have good seasons. So, again, if he gets back to the one from, even as you say, 2 seasons ago, or the season before this was past one, then I don't see a reason that the Colts can't make the playoffs. Xavier Rhodes, I look at that deal and I think, again, it's a bit, if you get in the Rhodes from last year, it's pretty rough, really. But if you get in I was going to say the Pro Bowl version of Rhodes, but he got in last year somehow, didn't he? So,
yeah, the All-Pro version of Rhodes from 3 years ago, when the roads were closed in Minnesota, but last season they were pretty open, weren't they? With Xavier Rhodes at cornerback.
Yeah, we won't talk about the roads in Minnesota this week anyway. We'll leave that to another day.
Dear me.
But God bless everyone, by the way. I hope everyone's safe. So I think the Pittman Jr., it's hard because they didn't have a first-round pick.
Yeah.
But he can start in the NFL. As we've said, there was 3 rounds worth of starting wide receivers. I really like Jonathan Taylor. I think that's a really good pickup. I think, was he out of Wisconsin, I think?
Wisconsin, yeah.
Yeah, really good pickup. He was one of the easily top, in my opinion, top 3 running backs in the draft. And if you compare him with Marlon Mack for 1 year before it looks like they're going to shift him away because I doubt they'll pay Marlon Mack. Yeah, there's no, and I honestly think, not that I said this in last week, I don't rate Marlon Mack as highly as I think Colts fans do. Put another player in that position, they would have got more yards than Marlon Mack would. Put a top tier running back in that position.
Oh, yeah.
But that's my opinion. So I think quietly the Colts got better, and there's lots to be hopeful for. And actually, I want to mention, if Philip Rivers does bust and they don't want to go with Jacoby Brissett, Jacob Eason, they got him in late rounds, but he could easily, maybe come in. We've seen a lot of late round guys, Kirk, Gardner, Dak, all make the names from late round picks. So there's no reason why he can't come in if Philip Rivers becomes the turnover machine that was last year.
Yeah, and I mean the fact that it's only a 1-year deal, it's low risk, and if it don't work, you can just let him go. But I think with the offensive line that the Colts have, it's one of the best young offensive lines in the league. Just giving Philip Rivers that time and time and space in the pocket can work wonders, because we know what a player Philip Rivers is. He's a very accurate quarterback. He's a well-seasoned quarterback. Like I said, he's a good leader. He knows how to run an offense. He's been in the league a long time. Just giving him that protection, which I think the Colts O-line can do. I think you can definitely see a different Philip Rivers from the one we saw for the Chargers last offseason. I do agree. I think the Jonathan Taylor was apparently a guy they were targeting from way back in the process. Maybe like before the combine, they really wanted Jonathan Taylor, and they got him in the second round. Great value there. Because running backs, they just overlooked, unless you're a superstar running back that had back-to-back 1,500 yard season in college. You're probably not going to get picked high up in the first round, but to get Jonathan Taylor mid-second round, I think that's great value for the Colts. And I think we're definitely looking at a team that could be one of the most improved teams this season, especially in a division which is kind of up for grabs, really, after the moves that have happened everywhere else in the division. Anything else to say on the Colts?
They picked a really good season to capitalise on the chance they've been given from other teams in their division. That would be probably my. If there's a year they wanted to get it right, it was this year because of what's happened in Houston. The Titans didn't get massively better. They obviously surprised a lot of people last year. So are they going to be the same as last year? Now everyone knows what they're going to do. For example, it kind of came as they burst on the scene last year, but it's hard to stick up at that top level for so long. Only very few teams can do it. So the Colts needed to get it right this year, and I personally believe they very much did.
I totally agree with that. I think the Colts had a very, very good off-season for what they had to work with, and I think the team's definitely improved when you look at it on a whole scheme. But before we move on to the next team in the division, we'll just get a quick word from The Athletic. Just use the link below, theathletic.co.uk/sports corner. You get 50% off your annual subscription, obviously free 7-day free trial along with that. Obviously, what else do you get, Kieran?
Oh, do you know what? What do you get? Oh, wait, no ads. No ads at all. Because you'll never guess what. When you're scrolling and you're reading the top quality content or you're watching top quality content, the last thing you want is bloody ads. And The Athletic has 0.
It does indeed. And, The Athletic doesn't just do NFL, it does all other sports. So if you're interested in other sports outside the NFL, The Athletic have got you covered. So use the link below. You get the 50% off any 7-day free trial. So join The Athletic today. We'll move on to our next team now, and that is the Tennessee Titans. They finished last season with a 9-7 record, and they made it to the AFC Championship game where they lost to the eventual Super Bowl winners, Kansas City Chiefs. It was also in Arrowhead, so fair play to the Titans. And they were leading. They were leading at one point in the game, but obviously Patrick Mahomes, brought the Chiefs back, just like it did in all the other playoff games, and they eventually lost. But still a very, very good season for the Titans. To say they finished 9-7, they won 2 road games in the playoffs against the Patriots and the number 1 seed Ravens. So no scrubs. They beat some really good teams. Just couldn't get over that final hurdle of the Kansas City Chiefs, which no one else was able to do anyway because they won the whole thing.
Exactly.
They re-signed quarterback Ryan Tannehill to a 4-year, $118 million contract. That includes $62 million fully guaranteed. So he was traded. The Titans acquired him last offseason for a 7th round pick from the Dolphins. The Dolphins were like, you know what? The Ryan Tannehill era in Miami is officially over. We'll send him to the Titans for basically nothing. And my word, the Titans certainly struck gold with that because he came in and replaced Marcus Mariota and just brought stability to the position. Obviously got them 9 wins. And he was rewarded with a brand new 4-year contract, which paid him $29.5 million annually, so fair play to Ryan Tannehill. They also re-signed offensive tackle Dennis Kelly to a 3-year, $21 million contract. He's the offensive tackle that actually caught a touchdown in the Chiefs game on like some wildcard play. He caught the touchdown pass, so he's re-signed on a 3-year deal. Just adds more depth to that offensive line. And obviously they placed the franchise tag on their star player, really, the player that took over the playoffs last season, Derrick Henry. I think it's a 1-year, $10 million contract, so he's still looking for that long-term deal. Will he get it? We just don't know, because running backs, it's, you either pay them or let them walk. You only want to pay those top class running backs, and even if you do pay them, there's always a risk involved, because they can literally drop from their peak into an average running back over one season, which is crazy to think, but it does happen. They signed former Falcons defensive end Vic Beasley to a 1-year, $9.5 million contract, and they also signed former Texans cornerback Jonathan Joseph to a 1-year, $2 million contract. Again, 2 low-risk contracts, 1-year deals, but maybe they come in and make an impact on their defense. Vic Beasley, he had one season where he had 14.5 sacks. His other seasons have been pretty average, so the Falcons let him walk away. He was also being shopped for he was in a lot of trade talks at the trade deadline last season, so there's no surprise that he left the Falcons. But the Titans get him on a nice contract, I think. Even with Jonathan Joseph, I think he's about 36 now, 37. He's getting old, but again, he's still a solid cornerback that brings depth to the secondary. They signed and re-signed another 2 players, obviously smaller contracts. The notable loss, however, they lost some big players, in my opinion. They lost Jack Conklin, their starting right tackle. He went to the Browns. Jarrell Casey, they traded him to Denver, who's still a Pro Bowl level defensive lineman. I think he had like 10 sacks last season. So he's gone to the Broncos. I think they only got a 7th round pick for him, which not very good value, in my opinion. And they also lost Delaney Walker, their longtime tight end. He's still on the market, I believe. They also lost Logan Ryan, cornerback. Apparently he's going to the New York Jets. And they lost Cameron Wake, the defensive lineman. They signed last offseason on a 3-year deal. They got rid of him after 1 year, so he's gone as well. So I think they lost some key names there, the Titans. But in the draft, with their first pick, they took Isaiah Wilson, the offensive lineman from Georgia. He was picked 29th overall. A surprise to many, I think we can all agree on that. We didn't think Isaiah Wilson was going to go that high, especially we didn't think he'd go before Josh Jones or Ezra Cleveland. And they also got Christian Fulton in the 2nd round, the cornerback from LSU. So pretty good value there in the 2nd round. What do you think to the Titans offseason, Kieran?
Do you know what? I think they had a decent offseason. I think that they are all in on Ryan Tannehill as the starting quarterback. And to be fair, I know we didn't pass the ball as much. A lot of, obviously, passing the ball off to Derrick Henry and, probably more repass options rather than, just in the pocket, throwing, dropping back and, gaining big yardage. But that's just the way why break it if that's, if that's what got you running through teams to the championship game. I think he deserves that new contract. But, obviously it's a big, hefty part of their cap room that they spent on Mr. Tannehill, hence why we probably saw quite a few losses, because they can't pay everyone.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry is an interesting one, because you know what you're getting with Derrick Henry. You're getting a power back, and look at how he did last year. He mauled teams. And as we've already said, he turns other players into players from the opposition into lead blockers like no one has ever done before. So I worry that because they paid Tannehill this year, I think they needed a year to sort out Derrick Henry, and I think that'll come next offseason if he has a year like he did last year. That's definitely coming. Dennis Kelly, I literally only remember him from catching that touchdown. I'll be honest. I think he's one of the heaviest people to ever catch a touchdown. So well done to you, Dennis Kelly. But it's a nice signing. As we've said, Vic Beasley and Joseph, I think the best days might be behind them, but they've added a bit of depth. And you've also got that youth corner they added in Christian Fulton in the draft, which I think, in terms of a steal, he could have gone in the 1st round, in my opinion. Christian Fulton, he was up there.
Probably like the third best corner in the draft. He goes 63 overall or something like that. Crazy.
Yeah, exactly. There was a few picks before him that I disagree with, but it's a great pickup for them. As you say, though, Isaiah Wilson could have been a little bit of a reach at pick 29. You could have easily flipped them round, to be honest. Christian Fulton at pick 29 and Isaiah Wilson in the 2nd round, but they obviously thought that other people were eyeing Isaiah Wilson up. But they did lose some key experience and some key quality as well. But I'd probably say they stayed around the same level, I'd say, for the Titans.
Yeah, I probably agree. I didn't see that groundbreaking deal where they brought in a superstar player like the Bills did with Stephon Diggs, but they kept their core intact. They got into the championship game. They kept Ryan Tannehill around. They kept Derrick Henry around. Yeah, they've lost their right tackle, which could be tough. I think Jack Hodgins a big loss, and they obviously lost Delaney Walker and Casey. But when you think of the Titans, you think of a team that's just going to run the ball, a power back team, and when you can run the ball as good as Derrick Henry can, it opens up the offense for Ryan Tannehill to pass the ball to his receivers. And teams will be so zoned in on stopping Derrick Henry. It can teams might take their attention off Ryan Tannehill and think, well, we need to stop Derrick Henry. We need to put all our defense. We need to circulate around Derrick Henry. But that can come in favour of Ryan Tannehill. We saw that in the playoffs where Tannehill wasn't a focal point of the offense, but he didn't turn the ball over, played smart football, just picked his passes here and there, and it won them games. So fair play to the Titans for sticking to the guns. And they also, they have a great coach in Mike Vrabel, who was a coach of the year candidate last season. So I think with Mike Vrabel, the Titans trust. Still a youngish head coach, but yeah, I do agree. Stayed around the same, lost some key players, but kept the main core there. Kept their main players there. So I think with the Titans, they'll still be relevant next season. They'll still be looking to compete for the playoffs. In a division like we just mentioned, it definitely is up for grabs. Especially if we talk about the last team that we'll move on to right now. Anything else you want to say on the Titans before we move on to the last team?
I called that they'd beat the Patriots. I've not mentioned it that many times, but I just want to say that me and Will had a conversation, and I called that they'd go through it. But it's all right. We won't mention it again.
No, we've mentioned it many times, and no. I mean, I think everyone knows that the Titans. Kieran does like the Tennessee Titans quite a bit.
I do like the Titans.
Rumor has it he's ordered himself a Ryan Tannehill jersey.
Right, I want to confirm these rumors are false. It's a Derrick Henry jersey. No, there is false rumor. Vikings fan skull. I'm not having this.
No, well, but we'll move on to the final team now, and that is definitely the most interesting team in this division. That's the Houston Texans. They made the playoffs last season with a 10-6 record and made it to the divisional round where they lost to the eventual Super Bowl winners, Kansas City Chiefs. Despite being 24-0 up, they conceded 48 unanswered points to Patrick Mahomes and that unbelievable offense that they have over there in Kansas City. So they lost in the divisional round. However, this is where things took a turn for the worse for the Texans. They acquired running back David Johnson from the Arizona Cardinals, along with a 2020 second-round pick and 2020 fourth-round pick. But they did this in exchange for wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, who is arguably the top 3 wide receiver in the league. They lost him. He's gone to the Cardinals, and a fourth-round pick. They also acquired wide receiver Brandon Cooks from the Los Angeles Rams, along with a fourth-round pick, in exchange for a 2020 second-round pick. So basically what they've done here is they've flipped DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson and a couple of picks. But the second-round pick they received from the Cardinals, they then sent straight back to the Rams to get a wide receiver Brandon Cooks to replace DeAndre Hopkins. So, I mean, I don't know what on earth the Texans were thinking getting rid of DeAndre Hopkins. He was still on a nice deal. I know he wanted a pay rise, but when he's a top 3 wide receiver in the league and probably the best player in your team, you give him a pay rise. You pay for what you get in the NFL. And Bill O'Brien, I'm not too sure what was going through his head there, but it's fair to say Deshaun Watson will not be happy about that. However, in for inch, they made some decent deals. I thought they re-signed Bradley Roby. It was a cornerback. They signed him last season on a 1-year deal from the Broncos. He's now been extended to a 3-year deal, $36 million contract. So he sticks around. They also signed former Cowboys wide receiver Randall Cobb to a 3-year, $27 million contract. I liked Randall Cobb on the Cowboys last year. In that slot, I think he did really well. But $9 million a year for a player that's, he's only going to get worse. He's only getting older. Was a bit questionable in my opinion. But I thought that the signing of Eric Murray adds depth to the secondary on a 3-year deal, so I didn't mind that too much. And they've also re-signed and signed another 7 players. They've also kept tight end Darren Fells on a 2-year deal, so Deshaun Watson still has his reliable tight end to throw to. Notable losses include, we've just mentioned DeAndre Hopkins, DJ Reed, who signed a big deal with the Cincinnati Bengals, the defensive lineman, and Carlos Hyde, the running back. I think he's gone to the Seahawks. And with their first pick in the draft, they only had 5 picks anyway. Their first pick in the draft came in the second round, and that was Ross Blacklock, the defensive tackle from TCU. They took him 40th overall. Again, JJ Watt's been suffering with injuries, and they lost Jadeveon Clowney last season when they traded him to the Seahawks. So they needed to add more depth on the defensive line, and they've done just that with Ross Blacklock from the TCU Frogs. So overall, what do you think from the Houston Texans offseason? I think I've got an idea where you're going with this one, Kieran.
Oh, we'll keep with interesting. Let's call it interesting, shall we? Right. Let's break this down, okay? They're coming off a really good season. A really, really good season from the Houston Texans. They won the division. They arguably they could have made it past the Kansas City Chiefs had Patrick Mahomes not existed. Sadly, so you can kind of say they are in. We talk about it a lot. They were in the window. Do I think they were? Maybe not. Maybe they're not there yet. But they have a superstar quarterback and they had a superstar target in DeAndre Hopkins. And as you said, top three. There's an argue to be said he's the best because in the last couple of seasons, you look at like Michael Thomas and Julio Jones. Before Deshaun Watson came, I think it came out that Hopkins has said, I'd have way more yards if I had Breeze and Matt Ryan from the beginning. Only Deshaun Watson came in the last 2 or 3 years. So, before that, Hopkins was getting yards with not the high caliber quarterbacks.
Well, he had Matt Schwab, T.J. Yates, Brandon Whedon, Tom Savage. I mean, these are quarterbacks that are bounced around the league, and Hopkins was still putting up, big numbers with him. So fair play to him for that. I do agree. Yeah. He's definitely top three, and the argument is made to be number one. It's not Michael Thomas, by the way. I do think Michael Thomas is overrated when it comes to that conversation because I'd take Julio Jones and DeAndre Hopkins over Michael Thomas, straight away.
But he's got to get in that short yardage, and Michael Thomas is going to get there and flex afterwards, as we've talked about before.
Yeah.
One thing I will say is we've made a lot, obviously, of losing DeAndre Hopkins, and rightly so, because he's arguably, I don't know why you'd get rid of your number one wide receiver. I won't talk about it, but maybe they've still got a decent core receiver room, like a decent. Yeah. So maybe it frees up space because let's be fair, when you're facing the Texans, there's one target, you'll put double coverage, even triple coverage on DeAndre Hopkins. But now at least it's got defenses thinking about who they're going to throw to. Will they throw to Randall Cobb? Will they throw to, Brandon Cooks? It gives defenses a little bit more to think about. So you can look at it like, I'm trying to be positive, Will, by the way.
Well, they've still got Will Fuller and Kenny Stills, who are two decent wide receivers. So I do agree, the wide receiver room has got the depth there. But Brandon Cooks also has suffered from concussions the last couple of years, and he's struggled to stay healthy. And he's on a pretty biggish deal. I think he's top 5 paid wide receiver in the league as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big controversy around this deal really was the fact that is David Johnson and a second-round pick worthy of getting rid of DeAndre Hopkins? And I mean, I don't know about you. No, it's not. And you look at what I'll bring back the Vikings, but what they got for Stephon Diggs, who I don't think Stephon Diggs is at DeAndre Hopkins' level. He's not far off, but he's not at that level. And we managed to get a first-round pick and even more in terms of a haul of picks. So I think that also made the deal look even worse if we're looking at it like that. As we say, they picked up some decent players in the draft. The big thing is they didn't have a first-round pick because it was they gave it up for Laremy Tunsil? Was that the one they gave it up for?
Yeah, and they've extended him as well, so he'll be there for quite a while.
Yeah, so I mean that was definitely worth it. However, if you're getting rid of your star receiver, you have a chance to get a first-round pick and recover what you lost by giving it, by getting Laremy Tunsil. But it was just, I think, maybe it was poor negotiations. But the Arizona Cardinals, I think we're coming to talk about
fleeced them, didn't they?
Are we talking about them soon, or have we talked about them already?
No, we'll talk about them soon. Next week, actually. Yeah.
So they've had a really good off-season, so they'll feel that they got a good deal. The Texans, I can't think of a word for this.
I just say disappointing, really, because when you've got a team that made the playoffs, and look like they could be contending with Deshaun Watson at quarterback. They're already in draft hell anyway, and they've basically acquired a second-round pick just to trade away for Brandon Cooks, wide receiver, is not as good as DeAndre Hopkins. I think it all depends on how, like you said, how good David Johnson is. Because a few years ago, David Johnson was probably arguably like the top running back in the NFL. He had 1,000 yards running and 1,000 yard receiving. He had a 2,000 yard from scrimmage season. He was very, very effective, but he also suffered a bad injury and looked like he's not recovered from it since. And like you say, running backs, once they get that injury, it'll be very, very hard to come back from it. And once running backs, once they reach like the age of 20, 26, 27, 28, they start to decrease in, how much they bring to the team. And David Johnson, we'll have to see how he does with the Texans. But I think overall, that was just a terrible deal. There's no other ways to use, but apart from it was just a rubbish deal. They lost the deal completely. I don't know what they were thinking. So they've got worse at the skill positions. And I think, like I said, I don't mind the signings in free agency. I just thought they've overpaid for Randall Cobb for $9 million a year. I thought they could have got maybe someone better or maybe saved the money. But look, they still want to compete. Can they compete? Probably. When you've got Deshaun Watson at quarterback, you're always going to be a team that's going to be competing. But when you're losing a player of the quality DeAndre Hopkins is and replacing him with, decent but not superstar wide receivers, obviously you're not going to be as good. It's as simple as that.
I like the Ross Blacklock pick with what they had. Do you know what? I think that's a really good pick for where they were and what they had. I actually quite like the pick of Ross Blacklock. It's interesting because if DeAndre, maybe in the back of Bill O'Brien's mind, again, I'm trying to play devil's advocate, is you've got to pay Deshaun Watson next year. It's very difficult to pay that. Like you can't pay everyone. That's clearly the rules in the NFL.
No.
And the way the market for the quarterbacks is going, it's going up. Look at Dak Prescott. You know exactly where the market's going. And with Watson, Mahomes on the horizon, the money's just going to go up and get bigger. So maybe they were thinking we can't pay them both, but that's the only reason.
That's where it just doesn't make sense to me because Brandon Cooks, like I said, he's still on a big deal anyway. He's still on $16 million annually. He's still top 5 paid receiver anyway. So if I'm the Texans, I'm biting the bullet and I'm giving DeAndre Hopkins his pay rise. It's probably just $3 million more than Brandon Cooks. And who would you ever have on the roster? Brandon Cooks or DeAndre Hopkins? It's a simple answer.
Get the first round pick from the Arizona Cardinals and you get the number 1 wide receiver in the draft. I don't know if that was ever on their mind, but Arizona got their first round guy and they did really well, didn't they?
Well, I remember the free agency frenzy that we did, the stream when free agency started, and it got the news broke that DeAndre Hopkins has been traded to the Cardinals. We were both assured, it's probably going to be for pick number 8, their first round pick. The Texans are probably going to get that 8th overall pick and get their replacement for DeAndre Hopkins. But we find out it's only pick 40. What? For DeAndre Hopkins? No one could believe that was actually true. But it was, and we'll have to see how the Texans do next season. But I'm not expecting anything big from the Texans. I just don't think I think there's just such a bad aura surrounding the franchise at the moment with what's going on. And with that Deshaun Watson contract on the horizon, does Deshaun Watson want to be in this environment? I
know that is one of them. It's hard to picture him with any other team but the Texans. But they need to. If they have a poor season, I'm pretty confident they're not going to drop, from the face of the earth this year. That's not going to happen with Deshaun Watson at quarterback. Not a chance. No. And there's enough there to be maybe competing for an outside playoff spot. Maybe, one of them wild card slots because there are 3 this year, so an extra one gets in there. Maybe they sneak in that way. But in terms of, they definitely. When you're a team at the top, it's a little bit actually what we talked about with the Green Bay Packers. I'd like to probably compare them that way. Is when you're up there, I think the Texans haven't been as consistent as Green Bay, but when you're in that window, you've won the division the year before. You just want to get better because once you've got better, there's not much higher you can go before you're in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So I think that'd be one of them things. If I'm a Texans fan, I'm thinking maybe we've blown our chance for the next 5 years of, making a Super Bowl, and especially if Deshaun Watson doesn't re-sign, it's literally, I think that's starting from the ground up again for the Houston Texans.
Yeah, 100%. If you lose Deshaun Watson, which they still might, he's still all they need to do is offer him his money. He probably will sign because he's, Deshaun Watson seems like a respectable guy. He's not going to, just leave the franchise because they've traded away his best wide receiver. Probably give him the money, probably stay, but it's a very, very tough spot for the Texans. And I think Bill O'Brien is another candidate. If he underperforms again this season, I think the Texans might get rid of him as well. But we'll have to see with the Texans because it's just so interesting because I don't think that when you look at the talent on the roster, they've lost Hopkins, but like you said, they've kind of got the wide receivers in the room, and with Brandon Cooks and Randall Cobb, and they've still got Will Fuller and Kenny Stills there. I think when you look at it, it's not the roster. It's just kind of like has the trust been broken with the players and the coach? Because once the coach and the players lose trust, it goes downhill. and I can definitely see it happening in the next season with the Houston Texans.
I know it is a tough spot, and as we've said, they've still got a good enough team. There's a reason they made the playoffs. It wasn't just DeAndre Hopkins on his own that made them the playoffs. He was a big part of it, but maybe we'll see a different style offense from Houston next year.
Yeah, maybe so. But that ends the Week 6 division previews. We'll move on to our where we think each team's going to rank in the division. Do you want to go first, Kieran, again? Because you seem to go first every week.
Yeah, we'll who doesn't love going a bit of streamlined work? So, bottom of the division, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. We talked about this actually before we came on a little bit, and I think we both agreed we're thinking about 2-14. But I'm going to be generous. I'm going to go 3-13.
I'm going to go 2-14 for the Jacksonville Jags.
Yeah, doesn't surprise me.
But contending for that first overall pick, I mean, if you get one of those young college quarterbacks out of it, I don't think they'll be complaining too much. But maybe Gardner wins MVP, and I'll have to shave my head because that's the bet with Rowan. If Gardner Minshew wins MVP, I've got to go skinhead. So
well, I need to create one for Jameis being MVP for you. To be honest, I need some. Maybe we'll get eating a W tattooed on your thingy there. Just Jameis eating a W if he gets MVP. I'm going to go third in the division. I'm going to go with the Houston Texans. I think they're going to have a 8-8 record, and they will not make the playoffs.
I totally agree. 8-8 for the Texans. I think they'll drop down 2 games, and it's just an average season. You'll probably find they'll probably beat teams you don't expect them to beat, but then when it comes against a team you think they should beat, they'll probably lose, probably lay an egg. So I do agree with that. Do you want me to go next, or do you want to go?
I'm torn here. I don't know about you, but these two are very close, in my opinion, into who's going to win this division.
Do you want me to go first then? Because I've got the tip.
I'll let you go.
So I'm going to go with Tennessee Titans second.
That's where I was leaning. I'll switch it. Sorry.
I think they'll finish 9-7, and I think the Colts win the division 10-6.
Do you know what? I'm going to go double 10-6.
Fair enough.
It's a risky move, but I'm going to go double 10-6. But I'm going to put the Colts below the Titans purely because it makes it interesting. Because I'm not going with the same division lineup against you, so we'll just make it interesting. I'll have the Titans go top and the Colts go second, but both with a record of 10-6.
So Titans win the tiebreaker, in your opinion, and win the division.
Yeah, Derrick Henry runs through DeForest Buckner and all that.
Darius Leonard at linebacker. But I think it's fair to say if they both finish 10-6, I think with that new playoff slot with the 7th seed, I think probably both teams might make the division, especially in the AFC, where it's very top heavy in the AFC.
Yeah, what we will do before the season starts, because I know if you do look back through all these division previews, the records will not match up. We probably have 7 teams making the playoffs, even though they all finish second. What we will do before the season begins is we will do a streamline, what we predict will happen, everyone's final positioning, and we'll finally tear it up all the way to who me and Will separately, we'll do 2 different, will make the Super Bowl. That'll be 2 weeks worth of episodes that we'll do in the future. We'll have Will's prediction for division winners, wildcard slots, everyone's records, all the way leading to the Super Bowl, and then the week after or the week before, it'll be mine, all the way to the top. But next week, we will have the
NFC West.
AFC West, thank you. NFC West, because we did AFC this week. Yeah. West.
Yep.
I'm the most excited about these two divisions, the NFC and the AFC West, because we get to talk about the 2 teams that reached the Super Bowl last year, but both in separate leagues. So arguably the tightest divisions out of the lot.
Yeah.
This week's close, but arguably the tightest division out of the lot. And but before we go, I will remind you that on a Tuesday we have the Wrestling Corner with Simon and Rowan, and they will talk all about AEW, bit of NXT, bit of Raw, SmackDown, and any pay-per-views that are coming up, because recently there was Double or Nothing. Good show for anyone that, and I don't even watch AEW, good show. And then on Wednesdays, we have the Granddaddy Top Corner, which is basically all your football. At the moment, it's Bundesliga, but soon it will be Premier League. And it
17th of June, bucket. Sheffield United, Aston Villa.
Yeah, what a game they chose to start with, honestly. I know we're desperate because they've just, unlike the NFL, do you know, in week 1 where they've gone have all the good games, the Premier League went, oh, we'll give them a taster of really crap house football. There you go. I'll be polite. But you never know. Sheffield United might continue their chase for Europe. Anyway, on Thursday next week, change of days. Thursday will be this show again. Obviously, another division preview. And join us tomorrow because we will do a Bundesliga watch along. I can't remember what game I've got tomorrow, which is good. But it's one of the 4 available games in the Bundesliga. And if not, because it's 1 minute to kick off, tune into Bayer Leverkusen, which is about to kick off now. So that's where I'm nipping. So thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week. Also, Twitch. Josh does a lot of FIFA content, if that's your thing.
And he also packed 99 Ronaldo today. Team season Ronaldo.
He did
which I tried to get onto Twitch, rewind it and try and see his reaction, but it won't let me rewind on Twitch. So I was pretty good about that. Pretty good about that indeed.
Past broadcast.
Try and find it in the clustered 7-hour video, how long it has ever been streaming for. But yeah, join us next week. NFC West, that'll be the Cardinals. That'll be the Seahawks, the Rams, and the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah.
So a very, very tasty division, it's fair to say.
Yeah, definitely the toughest in my opinion.
Yeah. So we'll see you next week for that episode. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you later.